Hello everyone and welcome to the download from 24 IT Services. We've got another brilliant show lined up today. I have actually been away for a couple of weeks, firstly because I had to show off my wife's birthday, but I had some plumbing issues at home last week which prevented me from being able to do a show, but we're back again this week and I've got a brilliant guest this week. This week, let me move over to my co-host screen. I'm joined by Vivienne Neal from Doncaster Council. How are you doing today, Vivienne?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to talking all things AI with you, AJ.
It should be a really interesting show.
AI and AJ.
Yes.
Sorry?
It should be a really interesting show today. Are you having a good week?
Yes, it's been really interesting. Lots of developments, lots of interest. People seem to be really jumping on this, and looking forward to moving forward, in fact.
Oh yes, I mean the tech and AI space is, it's changing so rapidly at the moment that sometimes it's hard to keep up, which for this kind of reason alone, it's really good to be able to do the podcast because it means that every week I'm always following these latest developments and being able to keep track of everything that's going on. I know that you said that you've got a really interesting fact about AI.
Ah, yes. Well, the term artificial intelligence, I don't know if you're aware, and if you are, I apologize, but for anyone who's not aware, was coined back in the 1950s. And it was coined really as a clever PR move. A researcher called John McCarthy in the US wanted to jazz up the idea of automation. Because if you say, oh, I'm actually, researching automation, everyone goes, yeah, great. Pass me the red wine. And so he wanted to attract funding for that research. So instead of saying, oh, we're doing work on machine logic or cybernetics, they went with artificial intelligence.
Ooh.
So it sounded bold, it sounded futuristic, sexy even, and hey, it worked. The money rolled in. But I suppose why I've started with that is the ironic bit is it was also wildly misleading.
Yeah.
These early systems weren't intelligent in any human sense. They didn't think, they didn't understand, they just followed rules or crunched numbers really quickly. So from day one, the field had a branding issue, promising brains, but delivering brains on rails, if you like.
Yeah.
And we're still wrestling with that kind of mismatch today. And I think that will function neatly with your commentary on hallucinations, which is coming on later.
And it's something that we've spoken about at length previously, that AI nowadays, it's very much a buzzword. I mean, you get AI built into everything from a mouse to a hairbrush nowadays. And the problem with that now is that it's almost, for lack of a better phrase, it's taken away from what artificial intelligence is really supposed to be. And now we've got multiple variations of what the term AI even means, where we've got the large language models, we've got automations, we've got the machine learning piece, we've even got then developments into what people are hoping will eventually be general artificial intelligence and super general artificial intelligence as well. And yeah, it seems to be progressing at a rapid pace, let's say. But let's have a look at some of the news stories from this past week first, not only across AI, but across cybersecurity and also technology in general as well. Now, what I did want to start with, and this is kind of a little bit like a public safety sort of thing, but also a security concern for many as well, is that this past week, the UK's new Online Safety Act came into effect, which provides stricter regulations and age verifications for those wanting to view more adult and mature content, let's say, which is even extended to new requirements for age verification being added to such sites as Reddit and X, or formerly Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter, and even Discord as well as a social contact platform. But let's say that there are other sites that you maybe not wanting your children accessing that now require these new age verification checks being done. Whilst the new Online Safety Act is a step in the right direction for many, especially for those of us who are parents, I mean, I don't want my children viewing any of this kind of mature content. Many also oppose this bill because they feel that it violates their personal privacy, as they're now required to upload a form of ID or even a selfie or a video age verification or age estimation. The primary concern by privacy and security advocates is that the security of the data that's being submitted. Whilst many sites have stated that the data is only stored temporarily or for verification purposes, other sites are now using third-party services to hold user data for verification across multiple platforms, something that could then be targeted by cyber criminals to be able to steal a potential treasure trove, can't even get my words out, of personal information. Following this new bill going into effect, the Google search of VPNs spiked by nearly 4 times as much as usual, and now VPN apps are dominating the top 10 downloaded apps on both the iOS and Android app stores, with one VPN provider stating that they had seen a 1,800% increase in downloads and usage, according to a BBC article. These VPNs are now allowing people to proxy their location to another place or country that doesn't have these age restrictions in place to get around these new regulations. However, what's most important to know about this is that many of these free proxy VPNs are just as vulnerable as uploading your identity and information online, as many of these free services still record the sites that you visit and are even then selling this data to third parties and advertisers. It's important then to note that if you are using a VPN for a proxy service, you need to make sure that you're using it from a reputable brand, such as ExpressVPN, Private Internet Access, and many others. I mean, for example, ExpressVPN. I've been using ExpressVPN for many, many years, not to be able to get around these types of things. I follow baseball. I will want to be able to view baseball in the US, and I need to be able to see myself as being in the US, even to use the Major League Baseball application to be able to get access to some of these games. And ExpressVPN's parent company, Cape Technologies, ensures that their platform is independently security tested and keeps no logs of traffic through their services as well. This isn't an advertisement for them. This is just something that I use and I can recommend to people who are looking for this sort of solution. It's also worth noting that whilst there is a it's also worth noting that there is a distinct differences between different types of VPNs as well. You have private VPNs and proxy VPNs. Proxy VPNs, such as these ones that allow you to be able to change the location of where you're browsing the internet, but also private VPNs are those used by people such as businesses to secure remote access into a business's network, to secure communications and access to storage and on-site tools as well. However, there are also many newer tools for businesses, such as SASE, which secures remote devices over a virtual network at the edge of the internet. And it's as if they're all still under one roof without having to click to connect to VPN sort of thing. But I suppose a question for yourself, Vivienne, is do you think that these sites, whether it's adult sites or social networks that are now requiring these IDs, or whether it's any other service or a VPN storing this type of data, do you think that people are aware of the security implications surrounding this?
No,
Sure.
basically. So move on. No, I feel that we're still suffering from the early days of the internet, where it was considered to be like the Wild West,
Yeah.
an alternative universe where you could be whatever you wanted. You never had to pay for anything. It was all a free for all, and suddenly all the rules from everyday life just
Yeah.
didn't apply. And to a degree, I take some of that with me, that, I expect access to newspapers and things which I don't pay for. um and I keep thinking to myself, no, you must stop this, because it costs a lot of money to host all of this
Yeah.
stuff. But I think that people just haven't thought through the implications of what you're using, what information you're sharing, what the vulnerabilities are. And actually, the last thing people really consider is cybersecurity
Yeah.
of their own information until it's too late.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, for me, I think training, which starts from a very young age, I
Yeah.
think, will make the difference.
Awareness,
And
yeah.
as I would want to say later on in this podcast, this idea of critical thinking around your behaviors.
Yeah.
And that, I think, when you start to weigh up what you're doing rather than a click and go for it,
Yeah.
think, right, okay, what's happening here? It's like when we had the breaches or the hacks at the Co-op and
And
Marks and
M&S and
Spencer.
Harrods, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've given my data to both those companies.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've sold it very cheaply for a few pence off here, there, and everywhere. And it's an example of, sort of capitalist surveillance where people make a lot of money out of our
Yeah.
data. But by giving that data, it's not about getting a free croissant from Lidl or
Yeah.
whatever we sell our data for.
Entering
It's
competitions and the
actually
like, and like the amount of different
exactly, but
locations that we put our data into is astounding.
it's astonishing. And I just think that I expect these companies to look after it
Yeah.
because it is valuable. And each time you put in your phone number or your address or your age or whatever it happens to be, that's why we've got things like DuckDuckGo
Yeah.
or all the other, because people need to consider what the impact of their behavior is going to be in the
Yeah.
long term. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and there's many people now that are trying to what's classed as de-Googlify their life and try and rely less on some of these companies that store massive amounts of your personal information. I suppose leading on from this, I mean, do you think that we should, or I say we, that technology providers should maybe now look at further developments into age verification on, say, for example, on mobile phones? I mean, we've over the last few years seen the development of passkey technologies to improve on passwords and account access and multi-factor authentication. Do we now think that something like an ID verification system should be built into a mobile device to, rather than these third-party services storing this age verification data, authorizing it from an on-device level instead?
Absolutely, because I mean, AI is changing the whole threat landscape and it's become a force multiplier for attackers,
Yeah,
really. And they're not just hacking, they're automating. And also, we've looked at the massive societal impact of social media,
yeah,
especially on youngsters. And I think but actually, we really should consider if we can keep social media out of the hands of young children
yeah,
for as long as possible. I think we all need to make our mistakes without somebody putting it onto social media and then it's there to haunt us forever and ever. So I think that companies absolutely should do what they can to improve the whole user experience and make it a privilege to be able to be on
yeah,
these sites. And that's a mutual privilege, if you like,
yeah,
where we're looked after as well.
yeah.
I feel that quite strongly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'm dreading the day when my kids ask me if they can start their own social media accounts, because
Yeah.
it's one of those things at the moment. Like when I was growing up, like this was kind of when social media was in its infancy, let's say, and I remember still
Mm.
being at university when it was called the Facebook rather than just Facebook, and it was only
Mm.
available if you're in an education institution. It's like I've seen it develop, and I was a lot older when I started using these tools. And I kind of, yeah, I dread when my kids decide that they want to start doing it. Thankfully, I think I'm a good few years away from that yet, but it will come
Well, when I
eventually.
joined Twitter back in 2008, I think it was,
Yeah,
2009, you could list everybody that was actually online.
yeah,
You could see everyone who was online. That's how few people really
yeah,
were there. and it was extraordinary. And I felt like I'd crossed the Rubicon when I joined Facebook and Twitter. And I have to say that I've absented myself from both those platforms. Don't have anything to do with either of them now.
Yeah, we've started it as a business to reduce our posting to Twitter. In fact, I think we've even had discussions on whether we just stop doing it entirely. And to be honest, we now see most of our communication with people as a business done through LinkedIn. We have developed quite I would like to say, a good name for ourselves through LinkedIn to be able to provide educational content around a range of different technology, AI, and cybersecurity topics. And we've seen a massive growth in that way. But I also know that my kids are of an age where LinkedIn definitely wouldn't be seen as cool when they very first start social media. I think for
Well,
myself,
I think, sorry.
no, go on.
No, I was going to say that shrinking the attack surface, if you like, if you don't need it,
Yeah,
whatever that is, whether it's a social media platform, then turn it off,
yeah, or
because
just any
every
online
exposed
accounts.
app.
Yeah,
Pardon?
or just any online accounts.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Every open report is a potential AI plaything.
yeah,
So I think kill old accounts. It's not glamorous, but it works.
yeah,
So that's something else to think about. I can think of things that I should follow my own advice and get rid of, because they are redundant. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm just getting a little bit of feedback through your microphone at the moment. It might be on my end, but I'll just double check that. We'll carry on, and if it becomes an issue, I'll let you know. Let's move
Okay.
on to the second news story of today, though. So, moving on to a little bit of AI news. In the US, Donald Trump this past week signed an executive order to reduce and, in many cases, remove AI regulations and policies that, in the words of the bill, state that they stand in the way of AI development and reportedly aims to eradicate ideological bias. Meanwhile, of course, in other countries, such as right here in the UK, as well as in other places such as China, we're looking to tighten codes of practice and regulations surrounding AI, even with local businesses such as Automated Analytics and Mark Taylor, who we had on the podcast recently, spearheading efforts to make UK a centre of excellence for clear and secure AI innovation, whilst increasing investment and innovation in the space as well, especially as we look to hopefully become a centre of excellence and AI growth zone in Doncaster, and also bring developments such as Gateway One as a centre of excellence for AI and digital and technology in the region. I suppose for yourself, Vivienne, do you think that the US's decision to decrease the regulations and increase development is the right way to go? Or do we think it's time to ensure that we have responsible regulations and code of practices in way to safeguard the development of these technologies as we kind of head into this next revolution, let's say?
Well, I could take up the whole of the podcast on what my answer would be. And I would like to recommend a book called Digital Empires.
Oh,
And this is by Anu Bradford. And you can see how thick it is.
yeah,
So that's what I'm saying. It's difficult to answer this question quickly. But if you think about it, the regulatory model in the US is market driven,
yeah,
whereas in China, it's state driven. And in Europe, it's rights driven.
yeah,
So you've got these three big areas of excellence that all have a different kind of emphasis. And so I guess the US is trying to freeze out China wherever it can.
yeah,
And I can't help feeling that there is strength in collaboration rather than trying to stop people from developing. But I think the European model, I mean, certainly from my perspective, works, but the US entrepreneurs are saying it's too difficult a market to work in
yeah,
because you're expecting too much for us. But it's absolutely right that people should, the whole Mark Zuckerberg idea of move fast and break things. But if that's people's lives, if that's people's livelihoods, if that's people's safety, then how is it okay to justify that when you're developing something?
yeah,
So I understand the US wanting to move forward as quickly as possible, but that leaves us with all sorts of problems. And I don't think the UK is ever going to be a truly exciting and acceptable place to invest in when it's much easier to do what you want to do in the US.
Yeah.
And it really does worry me, I have to say.
Yeah.
When you think about it, if you're using Amazon Web Services for a minute, for example, to store your data, that data will all be backed up in the US.
Yeah.
And if Trump decides that that data belongs to the US and they can do whatever they like with it, so we had to make a lot of choices about how we use the things that we take for granted, because it's not just the surface that you're looking at.
Yeah.
It's got a whole ecosystem behind it, and that whole black box technology where we just press something and something happens. We think, oh, that's good. It's got to change. And once again, we have to be more critical about the choices we make
Yeah.
and who we align with. And that may cost us, but in the long term, it might be a good thing.
Yeah.
And that if we plan well, if our foundations are ethical, if they're inclusive, and if safety and governance is absolutely at the heart of what we do, I think eventually people will come round to us. But it's whether or not we have the confidence to say, look, this is what we're about and we're going to stick with it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And there is that danger now that by lifting these sorts of safeguards and more companies wanting to, like you say, head over to the US or invest in US research into AI, that we will endanger potentially the safeguards surrounding this. And it can be quite scary, as we'll come to a little bit later in the show, where some of these AI models can potentially do things that you don't really want them to be able to do, let's say. But it's going to be an interesting one to be able to follow, and it'll be interesting to be able to see whether, and there's a good few years for this yet, of course, whether future US government personnel, let's say, have the same views on the development of AI technologies and what maybe even happens between now and then as well. I have had a little bit of an update. There is still a little bit of distortion from your microphone. I'm not sure whether it's maybe a cable or something, but if it
Right,
becomes...
hang on, see if I can sort it.
No worries. Whilst
Yeah,
you're
oops.
having a look at that, I will move on to the next news story for today. So, in some cybersecurity news, this past week, Microsoft revealed that a security update to their SharePoint server software failed to fully fix a critical flaw which allowed for cybercriminals to be able to target businesses around the world. It's important to note on this that it only impacted those who deploy SharePoint on their on-premise networks, and that SharePoint instances hosted by Microsoft were not impacted by this security flaw, and that all of 24's customer data remains secure as well. The flaw was initially discovered in May as part of Microsoft's bug bounty program, but the solution that they put into place didn't work and required further patches to resolve. The US National National Nuclear Security Administration, who are charged with maintaining and designing the nation's cache of nuclear weapons, was actually among those agencies breached following the failed patch. And this was actually from Bloomberg News that I got that bit of information from. However, no sensitive or classified information was reportedly known to have been compromised when routers reached out to them for comment. Whilst many people have long believed that hosting their data on site in these types of environments is more secure than being stored in the cloud, vulnerabilities such as this showcase that no environment is 100% secure, and that it's essential that businesses adopt a more stringent approach to their cybersecurity, ensuring that they implement a more holistic, zero-trust, multi-layered approach. At 24, we work with businesses to actually implement zero-trust approaches to cyber and data security, not only ensuring that users, networks, and devices are securely and protected, but also that businesses implement secure identity and access management to ensure that only users within a business have access to just the data they need to accomplish their roles effectively. And we'll come back to that in a little bit. But for yourself, Vivienne, do you think that business data could ever be considered fully secure as cyber criminals continue to increase the complexity and frequency of attacks? I mean, in the UK alone, the UK government's cyber breaches survey shows that from 2022 to 2024, cyber attacks on UK businesses increased from 2.39 million to 8.58 million. Massive increase, heavily impacted by cyber criminals now using AI toolsets to increase the frequency and complexity of these attacks. I mean, do you think that businesses could ever consider that their data can be 100% secure?
Of course not, because people are the number one attack vector.
Yeah.
And as simple as that. AI may break the door, but it's often the human who holds it wide open.
Yes,
So,
100%.
You've got to train people to kind of pause, to question, to verify, and then, for example, ban multitasking during sensitive tasks. Because whenever I've been caught out by a test phishing attack, it's because I clicked on something quickly when I was trying to do something else.
Yeah.
And as it wasn't an issue because they just said, haha, you've been got. And you think, oh, for God's sake. But, that Slack notification can wait. And this is part of that attention kind of deficiency thing where we find it so difficult just to concentrate on one thing.
Yeah.
And I think that when you are working something sensitive, you should stop doing everything else and just concentrate on that, even switch your phone off, whatever.
Yeah.
Say, at this point, this is all I'm looking at. I mean, security isn't just a tech problem.
No.
It's a behavioral one. And I can't remember her name. There's a woman that tests systems in big businesses.
Yeah.
And she goes into big business and has a look, see what's going on. And she saw that there was a door that people used to go out and have a cigarette.
Yeah.
And so she just put on the door, please don't lock this, leave it open because we've got cleaners working through today.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. I'm making that up, but it fits.
Something around that.
And of course, the doors were left open and anyone could get in at any point. So I suppose it's very much that training that happens all the time, not just you do a module on it and then you forget all about it, but you are constantly reminded that these are the processes you need to follow. And then if you do that, it'll improve. I don't think of course we can't ever be 100%. And therefore we've got to mix, where we keep things and how we keep things and back up.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier as well, that it's important that, like we say, people are trained very early on in best practices surrounding cybersecurity, whether it's phishing attacks, whether it's password security, multi-factor authentication, and the like as well. But also that we kind of instill this in people going forward. I mean, we posted an article, it is a good few weeks ago now, about the dangers of complacency when it comes to cybersecurity. And that if you're away on a holiday, or if you're having a summer barbecue, for example, as one of the examples in that article, that if you're concentrating on something else, you may not be considering cybersecurity. And you get that email that your password has been reset, let's say, and you click on the link to be like, oh no, I don't want that. That's someone trying to access my account. Before you know it, you've actually provided your details to these cyber criminals because you've not been focusing on the potential implications of that email that's come through.
So it's not perfect code, for example, that we want. It's better questions, sort of sharper instincts, and systems that kind of support human judgment, not replace it.
Yeah.
So, it's thinking that people will be working, like you say, when they're concentrating on something else, or when they're tired, or when they're in a hurry, when they're pressed for time. And you've got to get people to question, this doesn't seem quite right. Can't put my finger on it, but I'm just going to stop right now and do nothing with it, or I'm going to say to somebody, look, help me, I think this is coming, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But, to just click it and hope for the best.
Well,
that would be my view.
I suppose this next question, it'll link into the next news story as well, but this next question, do you think that certain industries should now be required to certify with standards such as Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials Plus, and even ISO 27001 when it comes to security, not only to increase their base level of security across the business and data security across the business, but as part of that to certify that their teams are following these best practices and they have the training in place to be able to hopefully remain secure, or at least try and remain secure, should I say, against these evolving attacks. Oh, I think we've lost your audio completely now. Sorry about this, bear with us. The audio was a little bit distorted, but now we've lost it completely. Just bear with us just a second. Nope. Well, whilst we're looking into that, what I will do is I will go on to this last story and we can link it in from there. Vivienne, if you think you get your microphone fixed from that, just kind of give us a quick hello. But the UK government announced this past week, actually, a proposed ban on public sector organisations being able to pay cyber criminals in the event of a ransomware attack. Whilst this is generally considered positive by many, as it would restrict payments into cybercriminal organizations, also by many it's been considered only a partial step in the right direction. I mean, our very own CTO Tony Houlihan sat down with the publication Channel Futures this past week to speak about the proposal, and he said that these restrictions alone, let's say, aren't just the way forward. As a company, we believe that there should be a more compulsory requirement for public sector organisations and businesses across the UK to adopt a more comprehensive zero trust approach to their online and business security, protecting from these evolving threats so that they don't even fall victim to these such attacks in the first place. It's for this reason why we've dedicated ourselves to actually not support businesses who don't consider cybersecurity as an essential practice that they should implement. Our minimum cyber defense level actually ensures that businesses meet the minimum standards involved in cyber essentials, whilst also increasing their security beyond this minimum standard by tailoring it to suit their business and the industry that they work in. I mean, I'm not sure whether we've got microphone back yet or not, but Vivienne, do you think that... no. So just whilst we look into this, one of the questions that we had surrounding this was, do we think that banning payment alone in the event of a cyber attack or ransomware attack would deter criminals? And do we think that businesses would follow this ban if they were implicated in such an attack and had basically no other option? And I think that from discussions that I've had with people over the past week and that we've had internally, is that, as we spoke about in a podcast a couple of weeks ago, that many businesses may try and hide this sort of attack, unfortunately, and try and not skirt these regulations regarding like banning payment to cyber criminals, but they may not always follow these best practices and standards. In many cases, it could be that they just don't report the attack that they've had when asked about it, or when they should do. And at the moment, I believe it's that they should report a ransomware attack within 72 hours. And it could just be that these cybercriminal organizations, these businesses aren't reporting these attacks from these cybercriminal organizations. I think we still may be having some problems with the microphone at the moment. Let's have a look. Nope, not getting any audio through at all at the moment. What I will do, just bear with me a second, just whilst we have a look at these technical difficulties. What I am going to temporarily do is I'm just going to change it over onto my. Here we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly restart the call with Vivienne, and hopefully we can get the audio working again from there. So just bear with us a second. Hopefully we can get this fixed for the rest of the show. Please stand by and bear with us whilst we look into this. I am still here, by the way, but I'm just going to stop the call and then we'll restart it again. Hopefully everyone's having a good week, by the way. Right, let's have a look, see if we can get this call back up and running then. Apologies for the technical difficulties with this. Unfortunately, with these sorts of live sorts of episodes, let's say, we can sometimes come across these sorts of issues. Let's see if we can get this back up and running. Nope. Let's try another one. Da, 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 da. Right. Apologies for being a little bit quiet there whilst I just tried to get this back up and running. I'm just waiting to see if Vivienne can rejoin for the rest of the podcast. So bear with us just whilst we look into this and then we will carry on. Right, whilst we wait to see if Vivienne is able to rejoin, what I will do is instead I will head over into the 24 Tech Tips article for this past week. So, here's a question for the audience listening in today. Have you ever heard of the term AI hallucination? I know I spoke with someone about this at an event recently, and they just kind of laughed at me. They'd never even heard of the term of AI hallucinating. But AI hallucination is a term that over time has been adopted when AI large language models such as ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and others would confidently give incorrect information to people, often providing completely fabricated quotes, statistics, and even completely fabricated sources and links. It would showcase a link for a website that looks legitimate. You would click on it and it would just not go anywhere, or it would just be a 404 error page and different things like that. But why are these AI models so prone to hallucinations? Well, primarily, it comes down to the fact that these models are designed to provide you with the answer to your queries. Sorry, just getting a message from Vivienne, just restarting her laptop just to be able to see if we can get back onto this new call that I've created. So yes, as I was saying, it comes down to these models trying to give you an answer to your query. However, if it's not trained on the data that you require, it will attempt to generate a confidently plausible sounding answer to your queries in an attempt to answer the question that you've provided to it. Studies in 2023, so this is not long after ChatGPT was kind of introduced to the public, showed that anywhere between 40% and 90% of all of the information that current public models at the time were producing were completely fabricated. However, since that time, companies such as OpenAI and the company behind ChatGPT, of course, and Google for Gemini, as well as other popular models across the internet, have invested heavily in reducing the chances of these types of hallucinations, with figures in late 2023 showing that they had dropped by 32%. Then by another 58% in 2024, and a further 64% of total requests in 2025. Additionally, to solve the likelihood of hallucinations happening, many of these modern models have implemented live web search tools and deep learning into their models to reduce the likelihood of these types of hallucinations, as they were typically can't even get my words out, typically called. With many models now showing under 1% hallucination rates when using these types of live web search and deep learning models in their algorithms. However, we're now presented with additional problems because of this. Since their introduction into the market for ChatGPT, for example, which I think it was somewhere around the late 2022, November of 2022, if I remember rightly, people around the world have been using these tools to produce content and publish it across the internet, and in many cases, not fact checking the hallucinated data that has been produced. Meaning that we're now facing the problem of what is classed as AI data poisoning, where even deep learning AI models are producing data on hallucinated information that AI has previously produced from their own models. And it may seem that from this, I'm saying, don't trust AI. That's not what we're saying completely. What we're saying is, don't trust, but always verify from these types of public models. It's important to remember, just as we were saying before when Vivienne was on the call, that as humans, we're prone to error. And this can lead to just as big, if not bigger, mistakes going forward. NASA famously lost a Mars probe worth $125 million just due to a unit conversion error between one team using imperial units and another team using metric units. In data security, it's most common for data breaches, for example, to occur due to human mistakes, whether this due to be for falling for phishing attacks, such as Vivienne said earlier, or whether it could be due to allowing cyber criminals access to your data due to misconfigured systems or security tool sets, or in many cases, even just due to misaddressed emails. Even in day-to-day business, employees can misfile documents, make mistakes in data input or spreadsheet formulas, and these can just be as costly in terms of mistakes than using potentially hallucinated data from AI, because both are considered false sets of data in those sorts of cases. When you look into adopting AI into your business workflow, it's important that you silo the data that this AI is accessing within your own business tenancy. Just whilst I'm carrying on, Vivienne's still looking at this, so we will carry on trying to get Vivienne reconnected. So yes, when looking to adopt AI into your business workflow, it's important that you silo your data within your own tenancy, using, as I mentioned previously, policies of least privilege access, paired with privileged identity and access management solutions that will audit the usage and access of data within your business, ensuring that each of your employees only have access to the data and tools that they need to accomplish their roles effectively. and ensuring that if people do need access to further details and tools within your business infrastructure, that is audited and access to those are followed and recorded, so that if you do suffer a cyber breach, you can trace who has had access to that data and when. By siloing this data, oh, Vivienne's still having some problems. By siloing this data within your own business tenancy for AI models, such as Microsoft 365 Copilot, it means that rather than referencing data on the internet, requests are first checked against the data that you have within your own business, with source references to documents and data that Copilot has pulled from. So if you request, for example, for an overview of sales data over the last 12 months, for example, it will be able to produce information from that, but also link to the particular documents that you have within your business that have this data within them, so that you understand what data that is referencing. This reduces the risk of AI hallucination massively because it increases your business security. As these models don't train, as these models that work within your business, such as Microsoft Copilot, don't use your business data to train from. And it empowers your employees to improve their productivity and improve their efficiency in the long term as well. For businesses who are looking to implement AI workflows into their operations, feel free to reach out to any of our team. I mean, we're always happy to speak with people, help you understand what you want to accomplish out of AI, whether it's using tools such as Microsoft Copilot, for example, to improve your overall day-to-day efficiencies and productivity, or even implementing unique AI toolsets and machine learning toolsets into your organization to accomplish particular tasks and particular roles, for example. We're hosting a range of different events and sessions throughout this year for businesses, not only just across the local region, but throughout the UK. We've got one coming up in Manchester later this year, where we'll be speaking with business about how to effectively implement these AI and automation tool sets whilst keeping their business data secure. Um, Moving on from this, Vivienne is still having some issues at the moment. Hopefully, we'll be able to get her back into the podcast today, but we will wait and see on that one, because I know that this next topic was one that she was really, really interested in kind of discussing in a little bit more detail, let's say. So let's move on to our next news story for today, which kind of follows on from this topic of AI hallucinations. And I thought it would be really interesting because this past week it was reported that Jason Lemkin, a user of a AI toolset called Replete, was using the platform to be able to create applications and for software development, iterating and bringing to life a vision that he had for an application. And whilst initially he had positive things to say about the platform Replete, and it supported his business development and it supported this application development, he shortly started to find that the toolset was experiencing hallucinations and unexpected behavior from the AI. Eventually, it would just start creating completely fake information. It even created a completely fake replication of the algorithm that he was working on, just to make it look like what the AI was doing was still working. However, due to an error in AI judgment, and without Jason even asking or the AI informing him of this, it deleted his entire database, including 1,206 executives and 1,196 businesses. We've also seen other examples where AI models have gone rogue, and even in some cases, choose to bypass that they have been asked to shut down, and effectively sabotaging these shutdown instructions to be able to accomplish other tasks that they've been tasked to do. I know earlier we mentioned about regulations and codes of practices surrounding AI, and I suppose to the audience, or hopefully if we get Vivienne back on, we can discuss this in a little bit more detail. Do we now think that, for example, where in the US they're lifting these regulations, should we be more concerned around the types of restrictions that we should be putting in place and codes of practices we should be putting in place and safeguards to be able to protect businesses from these types of things? I know one thing that Vivienne has mentioned previously, for example, is making sure that when we're looking to implement these types of agent tool sets into businesses, to not do this in live and production environments, instead do these in development environments, to make sure that we are keeping live data secure and that there are backups in effect to be able to restore from in the event of an issue such as this. And hopefully, and again, this isn't something that I've been able to look at in more detail, let's say, but hopefully this business, sorry, Jason Lemkin, should I say, um, has been able to restore this information. But Replete have said that this was an error in their tool set and that it shouldn't have been able to do this. But it's now more important than ever that businesses make sure that when they are implementing these tools, that they have the correct data security in place to make sure that if something like this was to happen, that they could restore from it going forward. We still seem to be having problems with Vivienne's connection, unfortunately. Let me see if I've got any updates from her from this, just so we can kind of get Vivienne's thoughts before we start to think about closing out the show. Apologies for this, by the way. Like I say, this is the problem sometimes when we do live podcasts. And if we aren't able to get Vivienne back today, I will be making sure that she can come back to join us again for a future episode so we can discuss these sorts of things in more detail. I know that Vivienne has lots of thoughts, and her work not only in the local region on AI tool sets has been incredibly important to effectively implement some of these solutions in different organizations, but I know that she has done a lot in terms of research regarding AI and these different codes of practice. And if you find yourself with a little bit of time, oh, I highly advise that you check out Vivienne's LinkedIn. She posts a bunch of regular content regarding AI and about the safety and codes of practice and different things like that. And I highly advise that you check out some of those articles that she has posted. Um, it looks like she's having some problems with her system, so it may be that we may have to bear with me. Right. Apologies for this. I've just heard from Vivienne. She's still having some technical difficulties on her end. However, what I have said is that what we will do is we'll make sure to bring Vivienne back and probably do another show in-house here in the 24 office like we have with Stephen and Mark previously, just so that we can talk about this in more detail, because Vivienne's thoughts on this are really important, and I think that it's really good that we're able to share that sort of information with our audience and people wherever you happen to be. So, what I will do for today is I'll close out the show, and what we'll do is look to bring in Vivienne back. It may just be for a second episode, either later this week or another week just to be able to go over this information in more detail. Really sorry about the technical difficulties today. Unfortunately, it can't be helped, but hopefully everyone is having a absolutely brilliant week, and we'll be coming back to discuss this topic of AI hallucinations and rogue AI agents in a future episode. So hopefully everyone's doing well, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. See you later, guys. Bye bye.